door to say you're coming. And his dad was like, I haven't spoke to him in 20 years and he's lived in America all that time. So he hasn't been here for decades. I'm like, fuck, that's wild. We have no idea what's going on over there.
Crazy.
Nuts, huh?
Yeah.
And there's no pushback. Like, you're going.
Yeah,
They probably take you right there.
Yeah.
Nuts. And all of them you hear, that's what they did say, is like, they're not wanting to. You know, most of the guys the Russians over there that are fighting this fight, they don't want to.
Yeah.
You know, it's a lot of their family that's
Ukraine.
going.
It's like there's so many Russian-speaking provinces in Ukraine, and you know,
that's so bizarre. But
it's a crazy time, man.
Yeah. Maybe eventually you go visit.
Yeah, at some point.
Yeah, that's funny.
Yeah, all right, we're good. We're recording.
Sweet.
All right, feel free to start whatever.
All right. We good?
Yep, everything's rolling.
All right. Welcome to the Inspire Your Life podcast. I'm your host, Morgan Kimbaro. Our guest today is Pete Lemke. He is the CEO of Dropkick Coffee. Pete, thank you for coming on the show.
My pleasure, my man. Love the studio.
Thank you. And I love your coffee. This is my second one today, and I tell you, man, I want to dropkick someone after it's aptly named.
All right, well, you're not a stranger to coffee if that's number 2. That's impressive.
Yeah.
But I appreciate it, man. That's I love those compliments.
Absolutely. Well, let's get started with you. I mean, your journey, right, into, to Dropkick. Let's start with your journey into, how you came to be.
Yeah. Dropkick's got an interesting story. It was a product of the pandemic, like a lot of businesses now. But my first business, I opened my first business in 2011. So I've been owning and operating different companies for 13, 14 years now. This was this business we actually acquired in 2020. I told you a little bit of the story offline, but I was always just a fan and a customer of it. So it was previously owned by a retired pitcher for the Padres. His name's Heath Bell. He had it in 2017, and I just knew a guy in the company who had a little bit of equity. And he called me excited because he's now in business with Heath Bell and this exciting coffee brand. My career's always been in F&B in some way, shape, or form in beverage. So out of support, I said, hey, they did this really cool service we still do now where they give you a custom kegerator machine. You can pour 2 different draft cold brews. I'm like, hey, I want to support, bring one to my office that I had downtown. And the product is great. So me and my staff had been drinking it since 2017. And I would subtly tell him, hey, if there's ever any opportunities, at that time I had a marketing agency, any opportunities to work together, let me know. And never got the call. So I wasn't offended, but I just love the brand, loved the product itself. And then in April of 2020, the first month of the pandemic, we were opening a restaurant downtown, which was a nightmare in itself, just getting through everything to open doors for a restaurant. And I was supporting them there. We brought them in. We were going to be serving their cold brew. It was called 7 Cold Brew before. We were going to serve them on tap. And we were a couple weeks from opening. We had to push it from March because the world shut down to May. And they were just delivering our first keg. And while he was there delivering it, I said, hey man, how are you guys doing with this crazy pandemic? And he said, honestly, I think he's going to walk away. It's already a challenging enough business. His kids are in high school playing sports. He doesn't think that they're going to be playing anytime soon in California. He's already bought a house out in Texas. He's pretty much checked out. And he said, he's like, if there's ever a time if you wanted to get involved, now would be it. And the next day I went down and looked at the brewery, looked at the space. I obviously knew the product was good. And then we did a very informal, hey, we're interested. You got the verbal nod. Nobody else is coming in and look at this place. The world's shut down right now. So we had a little bit of that in our favor. And we came to agreement pretty quick. So we knew the things we wanted to do with it, which was rebrand it and a bunch of other stuff. But we also knew time wasn't really in our favor because he'd furloughed his staff. And I know coming from beverage, you're going to lose shelf space. You're going to lose distribution. A lot of stuff can unravel. That's going to be hard to put back together. So we came in, brought his staff back, didn't have our agreement signed. They came back to work who the fuck is this? who are these people telling us what to do now?
Yeah.
And the rest is history. So yeah, it's a wild story to get where we are now. I don't think I could do it again, but we're here. Like, so yeah, that's a 2 cent version.
Wow.
Yeah, man.
So I want to hit on a little bit more about the pandemic and acquiring a business and basically revamping a business during the pandemic, right?
Mhm.
I know, again, we talked offline about that in terms of the pressure that holds, but talk a little bit more about that, right? Executing on that decision.
Mhm.
You know, there was a conversation that you had with your team. Talk about how that went down.
Yeah, the conversation I had was, we had to furlough our staff. We had an agency we'd been building for years. Um, most all of our clients were in F&B hospitality, so obviously they were all closed. And we were also in the events industry too, so we were doing over 100 events a year. So it was marketing and events, and we built this big agency. We had to furlough everybody. But like one of my, if you want to call it like Lombardi speeches, was, "Hey guys, it's terrifying right now, but there's going to be a lot of great opportunities that come from this." So I'm a big believer, whether it's during pandemic times or now, like if you're operating in a state of fear, you're going to make bad decisions, even in your personal life. And so I said, we just kind of we have to stay ready. And it wasn't but maybe a couple weeks later that this opportunity came up, and kind of took my own advice. And it was a great opportunity, but I tell it very casually now, but I knew there was going to be so much fucking work that came with it. So I take very serious by saying yes to something now. Everything now I equate to is, what is the cost of my time? What's the time cost here? Not the cost, not the dollars out of your wallet cost. This one was like, I know by saying yes and committing, this is going to redirect the course of my short and long-term future, but it's also going to require a ton of my time. And I was also very vocal from the beginning, like this is my thing. Not being territorial, but like I know we have a lot of stuff going on, the pandemic, but I'm putting like flag in the sand. I'm going to lead this through good or through bad, so I know what comes with that. And we did. Like, now looking back and looking forward, great decision, but I couldn't even start to count the amount of like time that's gone into this. Unseen time. It's crazy. And we're not done. Like, it's great the time we're putting in now. I just was telling my partners before, who've been through the whole thing with me, before, all of our time we were putting in was just to keep our head above water. Like literally every day was just keeping our head above water. Now we are gaining ground and we are moving fast. So it's a weird like gear shift I've had. Is like, now my obsession, like putting the time in, it's a little bit more rewarding because like we are just moving now. Whereas before it was just legit to make sure we don't drown. Two different motivations you have to find. I'm so much happier now that we're here. But yeah, man, it was a big commitment.
Absolutely. And talk about the time, right? The commitment and the sacrifice, right? And being a leader, right? And there's those long hours, early mornings, right? What was that shift like? I mean, obviously you're used to working hard, but now there's applied pressure with making sure that this company continues to grow, right? Right. And, right in the back of a paycheck or a check, right, for your employees, right? Like, talk a little bit more about the time commitment and what that actually looks like for people that may see it on the outside, but don't really know what's going on behind the scenes.
Yeah, well, especially in any sort of startup or new business, you have to be working the most. And I'm also not here promoting like you always have to be the person working the most. But in the beginning, especially this type of business, you just have to, because you have to know every little nook and cranny. You also, because you said leader, and I'm very big on like true leadership. And leadership is really the person who's at the top of leadership, which I was for this. They have to believe everything before you see it, right?
Yes.
And you have to convince people to follow you, even if they're getting paid. Like, you still have to be influential and convince people to follow this vision you see, but nobody else does. That's really challenging, And we had every roadblock along the way only because we didn't do some big capital raise. Like I see a new company every week that's putting together an RTD, some sort of canned beverage that's raising 7-8 figures with some crazy valuation before they've even hit the market. any of those companies listening, if you're interested, like hit me up for some consulting. I've actually helped them. Like it's crazy the evaluation that we're putting on some of these companies. We didn't do a big raise like that is the point I'm making.
Yeah.
So we weren't just dumping out money in payroll and marketing and a lot of the places people put money before they actually prove the concept. So I was really influencing people on this vision that you didn't see. And especially because we bought it with a different brand name and we said, hey, here's how we're going to switch it. Here's the target customer we're going to go after. Here's all the things, but we haven't done them yet. That's really time consuming, man. You know, and you have to actually believe in it and execute in it. So fortunately, most all the stuff that we envision, and right now, like I'm still doing it in a different capacity. Like the stuff I have in mind or where I know we're going now, I'm believing it before anybody can actually see it, but I'm pretty hard committed on seeing it through, you know? So yeah, I don't know if that answers the question, but that's how it all went down.
No, it absolutely does, right? And people aren't going to care until they see that you care, right? And that you're fully vested, right? And so when you're putting out those words and you're putting out the direction and setting the vision, right? Your employees got to see, hey, this guy believes in it. He's fully in, right? And like you said, you know, there's people that just clock in, clock out, go for a paycheck. Not necessarily anything wrong with that, but in a startup, right? In a small company, people got to be on board with the vision, right? It's not just, you know, supplying your lifestyle. It's more than that, right? Hey, I am working for this company with this vision, right? So, you know, I've been in the tech and cybersecurity space for the last 8 years. I've worked for startups and I've also worked for big companies, and it's just a different mentality. You know, one of the things you talked about, right, is being a visionary, right?
Mm-hmm.
And also being an operator. Obviously, the two go hand in hand. You know, I forget the source, right, of types of leadership, right? And it breaks it down, right, in kind of like two modes of the visionary, right, the bigger picture person, and then, you know, the operator, right? So how do those two go hand in hand, right? You're setting the vision, you're talking to your, you know, your staff, your leaders, but you're also, you know, operating, right? Like how do those two go hand in hand, being an operator and a visionary?
That's a really good question. I think for me and especially in a startup, to satisfy both sides, I've done every part of Dropkick, meaning, you know, I've brewed the coffee, you know, I've canned a can. I've been on the roasting machine. And the most important one that a lot of people don't do, business owners don't do, is I've also been out and I've sold the product. You know, I've had feet in the street myself, which a lot of people, they kind of just try to stay. It's important that you stay on top, like with the vision, and you're seeing it through, and you're definitely guiding the company where it's going. But if you're constantly relying on people or employees to tell you how this is done or that is done, and you've never done it, that can be dangerous. Especially when it comes to growth and selling and marketing and all that. If you're constantly taking someone who's on payroll opinion and advice and work ethic and telling you this is how this is done in your company, and you've never done it, that's one of the like key ingredients to failure. I wanted to know and do everything, not a forever thing, but I want to know how this is brewed. So when we talk about brewing, I know in literal terms. So it's not something you come in and you can start fabricating shit to me and be like, oh yeah, that sounds right. Let's go spend $1,000 on that. Or yeah, we need to hire that. In every piece, I at least touched it, you know, and I know my strengths. I know my strengths to where it's like, cool, I've touched that. I'm off it because I got someone so much more competent doing it, and I need to stay here, but at least I've done it. I've done it. I've seen it. So you can't come in here trying to pitch me something that I haven't seen and done with my own two hands. Does that make sense?
Absolutely.
But there's a lot of people that can be challenging. And again, it goes back to that's very, very time consuming to do that. It's great to just stay in the visionary space, you know, but I think if you're truly wanting to operate a business and operate a business profitably, you have to know those things. And I think people get confused, like, no, it doesn't mean you have to do all the things and do them forever. That's not a good operator either. But you at least have to know if someone's always telling you about how your finances are or accounting, like, shame on you. You should know that inside and out. You should be able to have a dialogue with them and push back a little bit because you've seen and done it. You've been inside the books, you know? So yeah, it helps when I'm really into this product and this business. If I wasn't, I would probably skip a lot of stuff I just said. Like, I'm into it for the long haul. I told you out there, all my past businesses, I felt like I've dated them, and now I'm married to this one. So I want to know, and I want to not know. Did I say that right? I don't want to be in a position where I don't know a piece of how the business goes. And it's not, you can ask anybody that's worked for me. I am not a micromanager. It doesn't mean I want to hold your hand. I just don't want to be ever in a room when you're talking about my business and I haven't known from direct experience how that thing goes. Does that make sense?
Absolutely.
So,
So talking about that, right, of, you're married to Dropkick now, right? You were in food and beverage. That was how you started. Why cold brew coffee? Why was it this, that, hey, this is what I'm passionate about in terms of this sector in the food and beverage. Why coffee?
yeah, I have a very big why.
Okay.
Most of it is because, beverage right now has never been hotter. There, especially the alcohol space, you've seen all the, hard seltzers, RTDs,
Yes.
packaged drinks that you could just crack and go. But even non-alcoholic, like there's non-alc brands are coming out every week as well. The opportunity I saw was, we did some market research, but also the coffee industry has always been a little bit traditional and outdated. We saw an opportunity to come in and create a fun, fresh, modern brand because the coffee drinker is getting younger. We also knew Nitro Cold Brew. This was in 2020, but he started in 2017. Like Nitro Cold Brew was the shiny toy of the coffee industry. It still kind of is.
Yeah.
It cannibalized cold brew. Like there's cold brew, just normal doesn't exist anymore. Nitro Cold Brew with that nice foamy finish, that was the thing. And we also started seeing, and this has been such a huge category for us, is the popularity in bars, restaurants, and hotels. So where I'm going with that is like coffee and cold brew, our target market is much bigger than any other beverage brand because coffee cocktails emerged all in the last few years. So we sell into, breakfast, your traditional coffee spots. We sell into gas stations, convenience stores, grocery stores, those outlets you buy it. But now we like 40 to 50% of our canned cold brew are in bars, hotels, restaurants, which never existed before. That category didn't exist before, but now people are pouring these with espresso martinis, horchata cold brew cocktails. Now they're making cold brew fashions, old fashions with cold brew in it. So we saw an opportunity. That's our backyard. Like we'd been in that space. We know all, like when it comes to on-premise operators distribution here, like shoot, we could be the cold brew behind every bar, restaurant. We just, all of my 10 plus years running business has been in that space. So we went hard into it. And it was just, part of it was just going off the hunch and running business long enough that I'm like, I always say your gut IQ gets better with personal life and professional life. This is one of those, I'm like, dude, this is it,
Yeah.
So yeah, unfortunately, a lot of that, our like educated guest has actually mapped out. And I think we're not even a fraction of the way to where the popularity of coffee is going in a space it's never been before. And we're the only real player, at least for now, that's playing very aggressive in that space. Like we have salesmen and saleswomen actively in bars, restaurants, hotels selling. We're actually end of next month releasing a product that's a 750 milliliter glass bottle of coffee concentrate. Kind of like when you go in and you see the bartenders pouring.
Yeah.
Now it's going to be that bottle goes in the well. So it fits in the well, much easier to pour coffee concentrate that, my idea is in the next year or two, it'll be in every well in San Diego. So that's it.
That's exciting.
Yeah.
I was just thinking, this idea popped into my head, right? Is we've seen the rise in popularity of breweries over the last 10 years or so, 5 to 10 years, especially here in San Diego. It's something that San Diego is known for, craft brewing. And I think also synonymously, you've seen the rise in popularity of cold brews. And I'm just thinking, right, this obviously coffee, right, and then alcohol, right, beer. If there's been some sort of synergy in the word of brew, right, that's risen in popularity. I don't know if you have an answer for that, but that's just kind of an idea that popped in my head. If there's like a complementary thing, do you see like in consumer consumption?
Yeah, yes and no, and you're not wrong. Like San Diego County is I want to say the top 3 or top 4 brewery city or capitals of the
Yeah.
country. We have so many breweries here. Unfortunately, the beer industry has like been at a pretty steep decline the last couple or few years, just because a lot of your beer drinkers are going over to like hard seltzers, or
Yeah.
a lot of people are more, even when they're drinking alcohol, even though alcohol is alcohol, it's bad for you.
Yeah.
They're trying to be a little bit more nutritionally sound, so they're not bellying up to a bar and drinking an IPA. Instead, they're getting a White Claw or something like that. But it's really interesting. Actually, right now we're doing our second collab with Catch Brewing, which is a big brewery here. And we've done a couple of these in the past where they actually infuse our coffee beans into one of their beers. So we have I think it's a blonde ale. I should know this. A blonde ale. And this one's actually going to be co-packaged with us on the can, but a beer coming out with them in September. So you're right. There is some synergy. Yeah.
Yeah, I was just thinking about that. It popped in my head. On the topic, I mean, you've got some different flavors here. We got the bold brew. This is 340 milligrams of caffeine. I was considering drinking this, but I'll have to drink that in the morning. We got the horchata, or the vanilla rather.
Mm-hmm.
We got the horchata over there. Bring this out.
Mm-hmm.
And then we got the cinnamon. So put it on camera. But yeah, so I'm curious to just kind of about the story of each, and kind of like walk me through, what was the genesis of the idea and the branding between each of these specific flavors? We got them all lined up.
Yeah, it's funny because when we took over the company, we actually scrapped all the flavors they had. We did so we blind surveyed the bean that we use in there's from Guatemala. But before we committed to like going forth with it long term, we brought in about 20 friends and family, and we did a blind survey with our cold brew using the Guatemalan bean, and we did like 5 or 6 other beans from Mexico, Costa Rica, Honduras, just to be like, hey, taste this. Which one do you like the most? Unfortunately, they all like the Guatemalan bean. So we kept the integrity of the bean in all of our cold brew. But then I didn't want to just be your typical, we expect someone to put out a mocha or the flavors that you see on the shelf. One, I wanted to look different, and our packaging, I think, looks different than any other can out there. And I will credit that 100% to Samantha. She's actually a partner in the company, and she does all of our marketing. She's been with me for almost 10 years in doing business together, but she nailed it with our graphic designer as far as the packaging. I just wanted something that was more modern, that popped, that stood out when you're looking, like when all these are 5 are on a shelf in any refrigerator, you don't miss it.
Yeah, you definitely don't. No.
But then the flavors, we wanted to, like I said earlier, the coffee drinker is getting younger. Bold brew, the strongest one you said, because all these have about 200 milligrams. That one has 340.
Yeah.
Bold brew was brought to us when we released the first SKU, the original. We had several people, surprisingly enough, say, "Do you have is there a stronger cold brew?" I'm like, "It's got 200 milligrams. What the fuck are you talking about?" So then we started playing with the bold brew is the same as the original. There's more coffee to the water concentration in the brew that we do. And then we started looking at cinnamon with turmeric was our second one. And cinnamon is such a niche-y category, but we added the turmeric because we know people are very health conscious. We'd also never seen a cold brew or coffee with turmeric in it. We started playing around with the recipe, and it came out great. It launched great. It satisfied a lot of like the direction we were going. And I all along had in my back pocket the idea about doing a horchata. I'd seen it with a brand on the East Coast, which was really random. But I grew up in Arizona. I've lived in San Diego for the last 15 years. Horchata in the Southwest is it's like the national drink of California, Arizona. And when I saw this brand out in the East Coast, I'm like, damn, we got to play around with that. It was very challenging because pretty much all of our cold brews, except for that one, if you look at the back of the can, there's no preservatives, no added junk. Like it's pretty much zero everything as far as nutrition goes. But the horchata, we had to bring in an outside consultant and a food scientist and play with the recipes a little bit because we knew, and we still are okay with, the fact that it was going to have some more calories. It was going to have some sugar, sweetener.
Yeah.
Because we knew the person who's grabbing that horchata can, they expect a little bit of sweetness. And compared to when you just get a horchata at a restaurant, wherever you go, it's going to have some calories. It's going to have some extra to it.
Or if you just go to Starbucks and get the mocha chapa frappa.
Yes,
whatever.
we're nowhere near those
it's
ones.
like literally just like 100 grams of sugar.
Yeah, it's a can of sugar.
We'll do the 14 grams.
Yeah, which is not much.
Exactly.
But in honestly, since we've launched it, that has been such a, it's done so well. It's what catches everybody's eye. Everybody says, "Oh, I have to try that. They at least want to sample it." It's my personal favorite. I do like a sweeter coffee drink, but that's kind of the sequence of how we went about it. And I said I never want to do anything with this brand that's expected. Like
Yeah.
we release a mocha because that's what you do. Like, no, let's. I'm not saying we won't ever have something like that, but we have to put our like stamp on it. What are we doing to kind of keep up with today's consumer and coffee drinker? So we've got some cool ones teed up right now that we're working on, and I'm always now I'm the gatekeeper stopper of releasing anything now because we've released these 5 different SKUs. When we put a new one out, I just want to have a full sign off as far as like, okay, there's a consumer base for it, distributors are ready, all that. It's just a big commitment going to a permanent new can. We always do in the fall pumpkin spice, so we can a short run of seasonal pumpkin spice because it's like a 3-month holiday now that Starbucks created. But yeah, we're trying to be a little bit of an innovator, I guess you could say, with the brand.
Absolutely. And right, it's very colorful and it does pop out.
Mm-hmm.
Right. I went to 7-Eleven today and got got the sweet right here. And it does pop out, right? You're like, "Oh, these are unique flavors. They're different colors, black, white, the way the color schema. I mean, the marketing behind that, right? The promotional, we touched on that, but what's the insight, the analysis that you do, right? When when you're doing the rebrand, what does that look like? What are the factors and implications you're taking into consideration?
Yeah, well, what's good with this brand is you always got to put yourself in the shoe or the seat of the consumer. Fortunately for all of us that were working on the rebrand and the marketing with this, like we are the end consumer. Meaning, is this something we would buy? Is the flavor profile something we would drink? So we were fortunate enough we didn't have to go get like we didn't have to survey a bunch of people who were older, younger, different race, like we were the target consumer and we tapped more into that. And it wasn't easy. It definitely wasn't easy because once you put something like this out, it's hard to roll back. And I'm a believer too from marketing and definitely from consumable consume product good. You get one impression with someone. Like, the first drink you have of that, it will determine if you're never going to drink it again and you're going to tell somebody don't drink that, or if you're going to be a loyal customer and you're going to keep going back to that 7-Eleven and buy more Dropkick, right? So yeah, we were fortunate there that we kind of internally knew the nuances of the end customer. So
Yeah, I think that's so important, right? To think outside of, what you envision and how people are going to respond to it, right? And I think that's so important, right? Of like, hey, you're going in the shelf, or how are people going to respond to the taste? And I think that's really important. Thing I wanted to talk about though is when you talked about investor relations and stuff like that, pitch deck. Again, like in tech, you see all these different companies, getting investing, seed funding. What does that look like going to an investor, preparing and laying out the vision, right? Because I know that there's been some mutual friends of ours who've invested in the company, and
yeah,
what does that look like?
well, honestly, I'd never had an outside investor in any of my companies
Yeah,
until this. So it was a little bit new for me. I was all for it, and it's definitely the type of business this was. It required outside investment, to do it the right way. I think now being in my seat as the person who's being invested in, and now if I do look at it from their point of view, is you're really investing in the person behind it, right? And it's funny because I just spoke at a success summit recently, and I was on a panel, and one of the guys there is the owner of a really popular restaurant here, and I know him very well too. And I said in the middle of the summit that we were talking in front of all these people, we were talking to some capacity about this, and I said, hey, his name's Caesar. I said, hey, Caesar owns Cloak and Pedal. It's a really popular restaurant in Little Italy. And I watched him through pandemic, like all the challenges, how he was doing food to go, other shit, and how he survived through it. But there would have been a completely different outcome with that restaurant or whatever that business if it was a different person in the leadership position, right? So now if I'm ever investing or if I'm giving anybody advice on it, is you really, really, really got to vet the person who is leading the charge, because there were so many opportunities with Dropkick, so many. And then thoughts actually crept in my mind, which is crazy. And I never had these thoughts before, where you just want to quit. You just want to quit. And and I think any business owner, facing those challenges has probably once or twice had the thought of quitting, right? But when you quit, you're letting yourself down, but you're letting now, if you have people invested, you're letting a lot of people down. So I'm not by any means, like I said, I'm 4 years into a company that's had outside investors in it. I'm really happy with, how our experience has been. But I think right now the general population is looking at raising money is like that's the finish line, like the end zone, and it's not. You should definitely be proud of raising money in any company. That means someone believes in you, they believe in your product, all good things, but it's by no means the finish line. Like now you just have to get started, and now you have people you owe. Now granted, you walk away and they're left high and dry, but I think right now there's a maybe a little bit of a false impression around raising money. That is the accomplishment. I'm like, no, man, that's the starting line. Now you got to go prove everything you just sold them on and you got their money for. You got to prove it now.
Yes.
So it's nerve-wracking, man. It's not for everyone.
Yep.
And they also have a voice in the company. They have a piece of it. So you got to be open to criticism. You got to be open to advisement. You got to be open to maybe some negativity here and there too. It'll definitely shape in you as a businessman or woman. So.
Absolutely. With the startup I worked for, there was two rounds of seed funding, and I saw the dynamic change, right? Once they threw, whatever it was, $20 million in the company, right? And then, my CEO having to interact with the venture capital fund, and it just changes the whole dynamic and the applied pressure and changes the direction. And it's definitely a very interesting dynamic that I got to see, not as, the CEO or founder, but just working for a company. I think what you hit on was really important about the person, right? The leader, right? In that situation with Cloak and Pedal with Caesar, Dan Fulkerson, right? Who we know, who is an investor, right? He was on the podcast and he told the story of Jeff Fenster, right? And Everbowl, right? So Jeff went to Dan, and Dan, I believe in you, Jeff, but I just am not sold on this idea of Everbowl, right? He's told this story many times.
Yeah.
And of course, Everbowl, right, is so omnipresent, and it's just grown bigger and bigger and bigger. And Jeff, right, has just grown in his persona and his brand. And, Dan even says publicly, that's one of my biggest regrets, that I believed in Jeff, but I didn't believe in the vision of the company, the product, right, the store. And he says, Jeff, if you ever come to me again with any idea, I don't care if it's like a dog poop, picker upper, I'll invest in it, right? And I think that's so important, right? The person who's leading, the visionary, right? The person who has the skill set, right? And so what's the contrast between a good CEO, a good leader CEO, and a bad CEO that you've seen?
Yeah, well, I love that you use the Jeff Fenster example, because you're so right, man. And that could have just been one small acai shop in Poway.
Yeah.
I mean, he was working in that first location. And now it's like the fastest growing franchise in the country. He's got people like Drew Brees, and I can't keep up with how many people now are invested franchising. But it started with one little store in Poway. So if you heard him saying the stuff he was saying back then, that goes in the same boat that I was saying earlier of he believed it. Nobody else could see it. He was the visionary, obviously, but he also was still hands in, and he was pushing the chains forward. So yeah, I think that's great. But to answer your question is, I think decision making is really important. Your ability to make decisions and move forward is what I found a lot of success as far as being CEO leadership, or whatever title you want to call it, is my ability to make decisions, not get hung up on decisions. I was talking to someone the other day about decision fatigue is a real thing. We're constantly making decisions, short term, long term. I've found that has to become your superpower, is being okay with you. I made 2 bad decisions yesterday, but 10 great ones today. There's always going to be key decisions you have to make. That's really important. And the more indecisive someone is, the less further along they get and the less people are going to follow them. So I think that was one for me. And the other two was I've become really good at bringing the best out of people working for me. Even when they might not be operating at their peak, is I've found a sweet spot of how to do that too. So making decisions, leading from the top, but also the people that are working with me and alongside me, I do my best job possible to bring out their talent, and identifying their talents too. So those would probably be key to me.
And what are the ways that you inspire to get the best out of those that work for you? What are your how do you go about that?
Well, I think we're in a digital age where I don't think I'll ever fully commit to like how digital and AI and whatnot we've gotten, because I think I'll always be in the human business. I learn a lot about my people. I think I ask the right questions. I learn about what I used to, as a young entrepreneur, think like my business is it. That's all that matters. And when you're working here, that's all that matters. Like, well, it's not, Pete. People have families, they have livelihoods, they have hopes and dreams and aspirations. If I can tap into that and learn each person, like what it is what drives them, then I can be of service. I can be a better service to them. And people can feel that too. But without actually bringing that out or asking them, which a lot of people don't, you stay on the surface, you just keep it boss, employee. You're never going to learn that about someone. And you're always going to be turning over people, right? If I can learn, even some people, I've had to bring it out of them, like, how much money do you want to make? Money is important. You don't have to, I know, like, I signed the check, but like, it's important for me to know what are your goals financially, and then I can work on it from my end. And my answer might be, well, shit, you need to give me 3 years then to get you there. Or I may be like, hey, change these few things, take on this, and we can get you in X amount of time. But I don't have those awkward bones in my body like most people do to talk about anything. Some people's goal is like, I had a girl who worked for me before who she just wanted to have, this is before remote went crazy. The pandemic was prior to that. She just wanted to have 1 or 2 days to work remotely from home because she just had she had a kid, she just got married. She wanted a little bit more time around the house. I said, well, here's how we do it. And I know the respect she gave me in return and the work ethic she gave me in return for that was worth every bit of it, but I wouldn't have known that if I didn't ask, like, hey, what do you want? And I don't necessarily always have the right now answer, but I've become really good at knowing, like, between you, and you all have different like paths you want to go on. I'm going to help you get there. And they can feel that, so I think that's important.
Absolutely. I think I just read The Go-Giver. You ever read that book?
Mm-mm.
It's a great book, right? Like go-getter, the go-giver, right? So everybody has, be ambitious, right? Be driven for yourself, right? Which, of course, you got to keep your cup full to pour into other people. But, a practice that I've started to do is, after every conversation, every interaction, is there anything I can help with? Anything you need from me, right? And, in situations that I've been in, right, for military, right? I come from a military background, and leading people, one of the questions I would always ask is, hey, is there anything I can help with? Anything you need from me, right? And I find that when people see that you care about them, they start to care, and you get the best work out of them. So I think that's so important, to be that servant leader.
Totally, man. That's why you hear anybody, if you're looking to receive, go give.
Yeah.
Right? It's the best advice ever. So, I mean, that from military.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think we're kind of losing a little bit of that quality though, man. I think everybody's wanting to receive, and we're not as much givers anymore. But
yeah. I mean, on that note, right, of just where, how things have shifted, right? I think in mindset, and so of like an organization and business. So I would like push back on that a little bit, just from conversations I've had with, people that have been in business, going back, my uncle was in his 60s, right? How things actually at times used to be like very top down, right? Where it was like, hey, the employee is there to make the boss look good. And now I think we've kind of shifted to be a little bit more holistic. Obviously, there's some organizations and businesses that are still old fashioned in that way, but I do think that, again, like innovate or die, right? People have hopes, dreams, and aspirations, and
Mm-hmm.
it's now like servant leadership that I've seen is something that's been developing, right? Where leaders are getting to understand their workforce, their employees, and seeing what's how they're going to be able to empower them to do the best work, and then ultimately, right, the goals and are aligned with the bigger organization. But with that, I mean, what do you see just like as you've been in business over the last 15 years, some of the biggest trends, right, in terms of the workforce?
Yeah, you're right too. I
Yeah.
appreciate the pushback.
Yeah.
I think your typical like corporate or just even work culture has
Yeah.
changed dramatically in the right direction. Um, but I think a lot of people can appreciate what I'm about to say is because you hear a lot of people who they may have an opportunity to take a job at another company that's paying more, right? And you heard that quintessential like um, you took it, you regretted it because you get over there and either the culture, the person you report to, all that is terrible. So what does that tell you? You know, like, is it more important to have that paycheck that you want or to have the culture and working environment and feeling at the other place? Well, I think more people are learning it's it's that, right? Um, and and I'm a believer is like everybody's impression of people is how they made you feel when you're the time you spent with them, including work. Like I'm sure there's plenty of people that are going to reference. I had this amazing boss. Why was he amazing, or he or she? Because they supported you, looked out for you, were there for you. Like inside the office and outside of the office, they probably couldn't remember like down the road how much they made working for them. They just remember the feeling that they gave them.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's the most important thing in the world, you know. And it's not just in the workspace, like that is just in general. So I may have gone on a little bit of a tangent, but I think that's for me that's the number one currency. You know, is I'm very proud of if you spend time with me, whether it's in a professional setting or personal. I always want to make your time improve on the time you spent, right? I don't want to just be walk away as a flat experience or a negative experience. I hold very highly the impression I leave on people when we spend time together. And it could just be hanging out. We can go doing anything. I know that that's our greatest currency.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Right. When we get to the end of our lives, right, it's not going to be how much money we made, but the impact we made on people, right? People are going to remember that.
Well, and I also too is if you work for me, work with me, you're giving me a lot of your time. You know, you're giving me at least a third of your life, right? That says a lot to me. You're helping me build this vision, this dream, this company that I want. I take that very serious. And the longer you work for me, and I know there's people out there who can attest this because I've said it to them, the more in debt to you I am. And not like financial debt, just more in debt to you as a person. Like I have a couple people, one in particular, who's been with me with Dropkick since like the beginning. And I've let him know, like when we cross this finish line, whenever that day is, you're crossing with us and you're going to be celebrating the same way we're celebrating. Because I'm like, I know it wasn't pretty when we first started. Like it wasn't pretty at all. It was a fucking mess. So the longer you're with me and the further we go back, the more I'm in debt to you just as a human. Meaning like you call me tomorrow and you need anything, I'm fucking there, no matter what. You know? So yeah, I think it's that way in our personal lives, but for me, it strikes an even bigger chord. If you work for me and you're an asset and give me the time and output in something that I'm building, I fucking owe you.
Yeah.
I owe you. So yeah.
It's fantastic. It's powerful, right? We do spend a lot of our time at work, and we want to be able to live meaningful lives and make an impact. And you can go about it, right? It's as a boss, not treat people kindly, just see them as means to an end, or you can look at it right through the lens of love and hey, like who is this person, right? Like
Totally.
we're all, to get a little, spiritual here, right? I'm a Christian, right? What separates us from animals is that we are made in the likeness and image of God with souls, right? the ability to have kindness, empathy, to love, right? Those are not things that are biologically make sense, right? But it is within us, right, to feel these emotions and be able to feel that with other people. And so, it's powerful to be a human, right, and to help other humans.
Yeah, man. If you're not living a life of service, and you got to try it.
Yeah.
That's what we're here. That's what we're meant to be. So, man, agree with everything you said.
Amen. Amen. Amen, brother.
Yeah, I love that.
So as you as a leader, right, as you've developed, who have been some of the people that have made a lasting impact on your life, and what's the advice and that they've been able to pour into you to allow you to be the man you are today?
Good question. Well, I don't have you know, mentorship's a really popular thing right now.
Yeah.
I don't have a mentor. I actually right now am starting to network around to people who have specifically taken a brand like mine to the end zone, meaning like either acquisition, so like whatever they've taken a product like this to the end zone. So I just wanted I think right now we're looking at mentorship as, again, I put it in the same category as raising capital. You know, we think that that's a requirement, or that that's like, oh, great, I got a mentor, now I can do what I want to do. Is like, I don't think that's the case. Most mentors, they're just going to be teaching you about all the failures they made and don't make them. So for me, it's like, well, I'm just going to go make those failures. So I don't have a typical mentor, but what I will say is I have a couple of really great partners, and who you get into business with is arguably the biggest decision you can make if you ever get into a partnership with someone, because a lot of people don't, and they're happy and successful. It is such a big decision. You shouldn't take it lightly. And I know to the new business owner, it's kind of like the honeymoon phase, and you're so excited to be in partnership because it makes you feel like there's a warm and cozy feeling, which I think there's a ton of reward behind having a partner through the thick and the thin. It's great to have. But it can also get messy sometimes, and you also have to be aligned. Like, you also grow as people. And to anybody who describes a partnership like a marriage, it fucking is. It's damn near the same thing, you know. And I'm not married, but you're bound legally by contract. Your finances, you share short and long-term decisions. You know, you spend every day together. Sounds a lot like a marriage to me. You also grow as individuals as much as you're growing as partners. And sometimes you grow apart. I've grown apart from a partner before. You know, it's challenging. It's tough. You have to be willing to have hard conversations. But in particular, to answer your question, like the partners I have now they played such a pivotal role in the last few years, because the pandemic, the challenge that presented, I don't think anyone expected. And we definitely fought through, but it was the first time ever in my career that I actually considered like, fuck, I just want to quit. Like, those thoughts never came across my mind. And I definitely, leaning on them was a big reason that we kept moving forward. And I know vice versa. Like, there were times that they leaned on me and I was there. So I think we're definitely not out of the weeds. So I know I'm going to lean on them, and they're going to lean on me as well in the future. That for me is one of the biggest pieces that's fallen into place for me, is just aligning with the right partners. So you have to be. What's tough, you can get a partnership and you can no longer feel like an entrepreneur again, you know, because they've kind of restricted some of your decision making. You have conflicting thoughts. I believe if you're in the right partnership, you can operate in an entrepreneurial category the way you structure it. So you're still making decisions where it feels like you're a solopreneur. You kind of have your own lane. It took time to figure out how to actually create that partnership, but we have it. So I'm very thankful for it.
How do you find the balance between running a company and then just also yourself, right?
Mm-hmm.
Your hobbies, your pursuits, your relationships. How do you strike that balance?
Probably the hardest thing to do. Yeah, it's really hard, man. And I wasn't good at it. I'm not perfect by any means, but I wasn't good at it when I was younger in business, because I was very one-dimensional and very much like business or die, you know, which that took a toll on like couple relationships I was in, took a toll on some of my personal wants and needs that had nothing to do with business. I was just very much, and I think it's okay to do this. There's a season of life where maybe all that does matter then is I just want to make sure that this business succeeds. And I was in that. Then you start growing and maturing and running a business long enough is you realize, well, what am I climbing this mountain for if I'm just going to be dancing at the top by myself. And in that really one-dimensional space of like business or die, well, you can't foster great relationships, friendships, family, all that outside of that. You can't keep operating that way. So then it's the challenge of, okay, how do I make sure I'm healthy in all those categories? And I think it's just a daily practice, man. It is. I don't think I'll ever be done with answering that question. It's just a daily practice because right now, my business partner has a wife and kids. I don't. And that will change my answer to you then when it's like, okay, how do I balance now, being a good husband? How do I balance now being a good father? Both at the same time, and also a good partner in business. Fuck, I don't have the answer right now. I'm just in a season of my life right now. I don't. So I think where I'm at now, I'm doing a pretty good job of it, meaning like health and wellness is important to me. A lot of the stuff that keep me, I've done a good job of not sabotaging, but I don't know how I'm going to be next year, and what will I need to adjust and change. It's why I tell partners, employees, anybody who's worked with me, like we cannot go into a new month, new year, new anything without being a better version of ourselves, right? Because you're going to expect more of me and I'm going to expect more of you. So if you're not constantly improving, we're not gonna keep moving forward. So it's a daily challenge, man. Yeah.
What advice would you give to your younger self?
Wow. That's a really good question, man. It's not like a one sentence answer. My younger self, I was, I think, living a little bit too far ahead, and I was always in a place of panic and fear. And a lot of like the things that I feared happening and worries I had down the road never actually happened. And I think I put myself through panic and anxiety in fear of what's potentially to come, that I was just robbing myself of the present time. And that took a lot to get past. And I think as you take on more responsibility, more roles, and what you're doing is that's a fair fear to have, is like, if this happens, then what? But it's not a healthy way to live. And I was pretty regularly living in just kind of like constant fear of what might come. And if anybody's in that place now, most of it never actually arrives. It's good for you to always have some sort of plan in place or strategy, and not to put that, you never want to put that out of your mind. But to live in the present moment in that state, dude, that is not good. So I think that would be the advice. You don't want to live naively. You don't want, it's not all puppy dogs and rainbows, and of course there's always going to be potential threats that come our way, but to just live in that, it ain't healthy. So
yeah. Hindsight's always 20/20, but the things that we go through shape us into the person we become, and we learn, right, with the things you talked about, fear, anxiety, right? It's fear of the unknown, right? And usually that's what it stems from, of, is this going to work out, right? This, that, and the other. But ultimately, what I believe is it does work out.
It does, and I'm such a big, didn't mean to cut you off.
No, go ahead.
But I think we've all had this, especially the last few years, is living in fear, with how the world has shaped. And there's a lot of people probably still in that state. but your decision making, the way you maneuver when you're living in a state of fear, um, is not good. And I always give relevant examples so people understand. It's like if you've convinced yourself that your job is going to fire you, your company's going to fire you, how do you operate? You're on edge,
Yeah.
right? You're a yes man or yes woman. You know, you're doing things that you wouldn't normally do. You're constantly on edge and worried and terrified, and operating as an employee and a person different than you ever have. Um, the same example I give is that guy who thinks like, I think my girlfriend's going to break up with me. You know, what do? All of a sudden, you're a yes man. You're worried. You're nervous. They can feel that, you know, and it might never happen. So I think in my position, especially when you're in a leadership position, is like if if I was all those things I just described because I was in fear of what's to come, shit, we'd be done.
Yeah.
We'd be done. You know, I'd constantly make like daily decisions. I wouldn't be able to plan for the future because I'm in fear now. I wouldn't be able to make like really effective decisions. I wouldn't be able to negotiate. Just be in fear. It's no way to live, you know? So, yeah.
Absolutely. I think when you have those feelings and emotions, they sow doubt inside of you, and then it becomes like a negative manifestation, right? It's like it's a self-fulfilling prophecy, like, oh, it's not going to work out with me and her in this relationship, or I'm not going to get that deal, right? So you're already like basically setting yourself up for defeat, as opposed to, hey, like thinking optimistically and positively, and it's just right mindset.
Yeah,
At the end of the day.
and it's really interesting because we were having this conversation somewhere along these lines, and I started talking about leadership and being a business owner. Is you have to be really careful with the voice, like your inner voice. The reason being, I think everybody needs to be careful with self-talk and what they tell themselves. But with any leadership or ownership experience, you especially do, because you don't have someone above you like a traditional like job place where you have a supervisor, a manager, or whoever, who's telling you right and telling you wrong, you know, who's rewarding you for doing good, keeping you in line, you know, those gratifying pieces along your career. As a business owner, there's no one. Like you're kind of your voice, like you're telling you those answers, like, fuck, I really made a bad move today, or oh man, that worked out great. You're kind of, you know, you're the fans in the stand. So you have to be especially careful of how you evaluate yourself, how you talk to yourself, how you like beat yourself up. It's challenging, which is what, you know, now going full circle, it's probably why a lot of people do have the power and mentorship, is you have that's where they fill in and say, hey man, you know, ease up. You're on the right path. It's just, it can be terrifying because I think everybody likes some sort of reward system, or to know, hey, where I'm going, I'm going the right way, you know? So I've learned to be very mindful of the things I'm telling myself. It's a real thing.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
100%.
Yeah.
From if you could think back to your formative years, right, childhood, growing up, what would you say what made the most impact or experience to shape your personality as an adult today?
As a kid?
Yeah. Something unique.
Yeah. So I don't know if this qualifies, but I think I learned a lot. So I wasn't like raised by a single mom, but I kind of was. And my mom, like on paper, is a totally different person than me. Like, she's not a risk taker. She worked for the federal government for her whole career, almost 50 years, and retired as a court reporter. So and she'll admit now, she's like, oh, Pete, it terrifies me just like watching you from a distance, the decision you're making. She's just not wired that way.
Mm-hmm.
But what I did take from her is she worked her fucking ass off. Like, she worked really hard, always worked. And I can't not remember a time as a kid seeing her work. She left every day for work, like every day to Phoenix, home, worked every single day. And I think what that ingrained in me is like, I need to do the same. You know, even though I'm doing it in a different capacity, it's a little bit riskier of a place I'm doing it. I work every fucking day. And she's also, I think, a big, when we talk about like your currencies, the feeling you give it, the feeling and impression you make on people in your life, that's like the epitome of what she does. She is such a, I have to like, I have to pressure her to be selfish sometimes. Even if it's like, Ma, go out and buy yourself something. You know, she's just so selfless and of service to everyone, not just family. She's just that way. So I think I've never told her this, but I think I gained those qualities, and it wasn't something she would sit me down and tell me this is how you need to be. And that's a really important detail. Is like showing it is way more powerful and it's longer lasting than by telling it. She showed me it my entire childhood. I watched her work and I watched her be selfless to me and anybody around us. And naturally, I think she passed those qualities on to me. So yeah, that's just what first comes to mind when you ask that. So it wasn't like an isolated incident. It's just I was raised watching her do that.
Yeah.
So it's not a surprise that that's kind of how I carry myself,
Absolutely. And, obviously, what comes of that is love, right? Your mom, right? The love that she showed for you and, working hard, making sure that you were set up for success, right? And I think that's, it's the thing we see as kids, right? The relationship we have with our parents, right? The values they instill in us, and that carries on into who we become as adults. And sometimes as kids, right, we don't necessarily recognize that, but it's not until later you realize all the sacrifices and, care that our parents gave us.
Yeah, I think that goes for a lot of things. Is I don't think you realize most all the benefits or why you're doing the things you're doing until later on, right? I think it was Steve Jobs who said it. Like you can only reconnect the dots backwards in life. I am starting to really realize that, really realize that. And even to your question, like I now know, but then I didn't. And I had everything you described. You're still like, you have your frustrations, disappointments, upset with your parents or whatnot. But now I know. So yeah.
Yeah. So what would you say when you get up in the morning, right? You're getting ready for the day, thinking about the challenges, the things you need to accomplish, right? What is the thing that drives you and inspires you to get after the day?
Ooh. Well, I don't have a rigid, I used to have a much more rigid morning routine. Now it's just kind of like second nature. I, I used to be very much feet hit the ground and first thing I'm thinking about is work, and it's still very much easy, or still very much is. I think now where we've gotten with Dropkick, where I said before is it's not where we're just keeping our head above water, we're actually gaining ground. I'm fired up. And it's not just in the morning when I wake up, I'm fired up just in general. So right now that for me, like where we're growing into, it's I think what I've spent the last several years wanting to get to this point. So it doesn't start and stop in the morning. It's like, tonight I'm going to Riverside, Palm Springs for the night. It's growing this thing. This is what we put those heavy hours and years into to not drowning. We're there. So I'm like, well, God damn it. I got to make sure we all did it for a reason. Like we don't look back and like we did it to get here. Now let's make sure everything we sacrificed and did back then, we did it for the right reason. So it's my proving ground right now. But I don't necessarily have a super militant morning. I am an early riser. I'm a workout every day guy. I have a cold plunge and sauna in my house. I have all those things. I just don't want to be another person out there saying, if you don't do all those things, you're not gonna succeed the day. So I'm not gonna say that, but I very much now have just, I guess, my habits. It's not a routine. I think we're all humans. We're not supposed to be living life so routine. Like the idea is you break your routine each day. Like there's a point in time like, hey, this is getting a little routine, meaning like I need to see new places, taste new things. I've lived in San Diego 15 years. We're not drone. Like we don't want to be living every day on the same exact pattern routine. So I don't want to get on here and say, hey, if you don't do this by 6 a.m, shame on you.
Yeah.
Like, no, no. That's why I said I've built in great habits. I'm excited about what I'm doing. It took a lot of time to get to where I'm at. Period.
Yep. Yep. And the thing you hit on, right? Not one size is going to fit all, right?
No.
And it's not one specific habit that's going to set you, make you that ultra successful, right? It's a myriad of things, right? It's time, it's building, right? And for some, right, it's getting up in the morning, praying, affirmations, making your
Hmm.
bed, getting up and working out. But not one size is going to fit all, not one workout routine, not one plan, right? And so always got to understand yourself, right, and what's going to work. And I think that's really important. And the thing, right, going forward with Dropkick in your life, what are the things that you're really excited about right now for the company and for your growth?
Yeah. Before I answer that, because you're right, I, I I love you said it's not one size fits all because I'm like the biggest advocate of that.
Yeah.
It's not, man. And I think we need to stop we need to stop success shaming people. Like success is not one size fits all, and it's
Yes.
not one definition, not one vision. Um, you know, the woman who wakes up and gets her kids up and ready for school and packs their lunch and gets them out the door, that morning routine is success to her. And like what's success to me and what I do in the morning is totally different, but not one is better than the other. So I think we need to stop having this like finger pointing if you're not doing this. Like, no, do what makes you happy, man. Do what makes you happy. Uh, so yeah, I didn't want to jump off of that
No, no, not at
comment
all. Not
because
at all.
I
Hit
think
on
that's
it.
what's happening right now. And the loudest voices get heard the most, and I think the people being the loudest most right now are that category of success, and that's totally fine. Like I actually I recognize that category of success, but in a year from now, morning success could very easily be like just getting your kids up and out and all that, and you're fucking happy,
Yeah.
right? And you said too, you might be getting up and like you pray or meditate, like that's great. And if you're smiling doing it, tune out the rest. Everything else is just noise. Everything else is just noise. That's it. So, yeah.
Yeah.
But I don't remember what your question
Oh,
was before
oh.
that. I just wanted to make sure I didn't jump off of the one size fits all because I've used that term before, and I think it's important that I made my own comment on it.
No, 100% agree. The last podcast I did was with a woman named Crystal, and she has her own Pilates app, right? And we're talking about workout routines and you know just like the tribalism sometimes of CrossFitters and
Yeah,
power lifters. It's like, hey, I'm pro health, right?
yeah,
Unfortunately, in America, we have an obesity epidemic, right? So if people are getting up, moving, and they like to run, or they like to do CrossFit, or they like to power lift, more power to you because, there's a lot of people that aren't doing that, and I want everyone to do it. So
hmm
that's kind of like where that stems from. But again, you got to know yourself and what's going to work for you. But the question in that was, for you and Dropkick, what is the thing that you're most excited for right now?
with Dropkick. So we a few months ago launched with. So we've had distribution in San Diego for 4 years. We
Mhm.
have a few different distributors. We actually launched distro in Arizona as well, with our cans out there. But a couple months ago, we just launched with Cisco, which is a really big deal for us. It was Cisco here in San Diego and Cisco in Riverside. Um, right now, I've been spending a lot of time, growing in there. They have one of the bigger footprints in food distribution in the nation. They're a publicly traded company. They're massive. So right now, that's really been my day-to-day drive is just getting as involved with their 100+ sales reps between these two markets
Mhm.
and growing into, we're looking at LA, we're looking at Nevada. So right now I'm not trying to look too far past that because this is, as far as milestones with the company, this is a big one for us. So we kind of have to nail it right now. And then all like the future stuff that I still have in mind, it'll really help open the floodgates for that. But right now I'm committed to being a strong partner to them and making sure this product just crushes with them. Beyond that, we've been on military. We've been in military bases for years. Right now, we're working on a national account with the Marines, which is great. We've been on all the Navy bases here since 2021 and done really well. Military guys fucking love this. Right now, we're sponsoring a team of SEALs who are on like a 6 months training, which is awesome. They drink cold brew like it's fucking water. which is great, and they're super like, man, if we could put them on, they can't have any camera or content shot, I would, because I'm like, they are walking, talking testimonials of Dropkick Brew. They're awesome, awesome
Love
guys.
that.
But, we just got in, that's why I was out in Palm Springs. We just got into 29 Palms, the Marine base out there, same thing in Pendleton. And, fingers crossed, which it looks like it's going to happen. We're working on national accounts with the Marines from here to the East Coast. So, but then there's everything else in between. But those are, I think, would be what is my right now focus. Ask me again in a month, it's probably going to look different. So yeah, and the third quarter, right? The third quarter is our busiest quarter of the year. So right now, I'm competitive too, and I really build our growth off year over year numbers. So I'm very competitive on dominating our last year quarterly sales, which we've done so far in 2024. It'll be a tall order in the third quarter, but we're pacing. So yeah,
Can't wait to see it all come to fruition and the growth and evolution. It's gonna be amazing.
yeah, man. It's exciting. It's exciting, but now it's just a different. This type of company is it's a black hole of time, is what I describe it as, and I think I've always had businesses that are really sexy on the outside. Like, it's a sexy, fun product,
Yeah.
and it's coffee, it's cold brew, but if I distilled it down, we're really in manufacturing, right? Like, we manufacture a product that people consume. There's a lot that, like, now that product is a really cool product and we enjoy it, fortunately, but we have to we import goods. Our manufacturing is roasting and brewing and canning, everything in between. So what goes into that is, it's not the fun part. That's why I said I have all these things that are driving me right now, but as this company grows, the responsibilities grow too, because we're in a space like this. So it's rewarding and terrifying at the same time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that's the only way you achieve growth, is by going through a little bit of pain.
Yeah, man.
Yeah.
You said that.
Yeah. So, question I have is, we talk about, advice and mentorship. What's the worst piece of advice you've ever gotten?
The worst piece of advice.
Maybe someone throwing shade out or something like that. Saying, "No, you can't do this." Or,
Oh man. Nothing's popping to mind right now. I know honestly, man, I'm really good about, and I think the bad advice would have probably been younger, because now I'm really good at, I welcome in any sort of criticism or advice, for sure.
yeah.
But now I've been doing this long enough that I'm really good at compartmentalizing whether it's good or bad advice and not letting it affect me. So, and also too, now I think maybe some of what you're describing doesn't come directly to me. It's like indirectly thrown out there, which is even more of a reason not to listen to it. But maybe is not doing business with your friends. I don't know if that's necessarily true. Not doing business with certain friends, but it's not always tried and true that, absolutely stay away from getting into business or partnership with friends of yours. I think there's a lot you can learn about people and know and get a running start. Like I said before, is who you commit to in partnership is one of the biggest decisions in owning a business. You learn a lot about someone by being their friend. You learn their dirty secrets. You learn their strengths, their weaknesses, their personality traits. You also, if you're going to be in a partnership together, you should probably be aligned outside of the office as much as you are inside, right? Because you're doing life together. So I think I've learned it. Like, my partners were technically friends before. It will challenge your friendship for sure, but I don't think it's necessarily the best advice, or to stay away from doing business with friends. So I don't have a spot-free record with it, but yeah, I wouldn't necessarily pass that advice along to anybody else. So it's a risk, though. it is a risk. So
What advice would you give to young and aspiring entrepreneurs?
I think I would tell them, well, I get asked that often, but it's usually from someone who is the entrepreneur, like wanting to start a business, asking advice about a business, what they should do. I think now my questions go a different direction. Is I try to figure out what drives them personally. Like I said before, I ask very effective questions like I do to my employees to determine whether like, is it starting a business that really is what can it be rewarding? Is that really what you're looking for? And what we were talking about before is like there's a lot of workplaces and cultures now that are actually they're driving entrepreneurism within the workplace when you're actually an employee of the company. Is I think right now we're all gravitating towards entrepreneurship because it's so popular. If you think when we were kids, like I couldn't name one business owner that I knew, like between friends, families, parents, like all our parents, they worked for the man. They worked. This is just a cultural shift that entrepreneurism has become really popular, so naturally you gravitate towards it. But you have to be prepared for what it can do to your personal life. It changes and reshapes the direction that you're going with your life. You have to be okay with that. Now, if you have a direction you want to go with your personal life, that is like in stark contrast to what it's like owning a business, and it'll compromise it, then I would tell you don't start the business. I have friends that their goals and aspirations where they really wanted to get married, have kids, do all that. If those are like prime, like those are important to you, you should be very careful starting a business because that becomes your wife, your kids, your everything. You're attached to it. So yeah, I think I would just say be very careful and make sure you're doing it for the right reasons, not just what the outside noise is telling you.
Absolutely. I think that's very important.
Yeah. And with the way that the workforce has changed, man, like, and how popular remote positions have gotten, and the new industries that have emerged between e-commerce and now AI, where it's going, and like, I have so many friends where I look, I'm like, am I the business owner or are you? Meaning like, they work from anywhere. There's now this new popular like unlimited PTO that's going around. I'm starting to say like, hey, most people get into business or entrepreneurship because they want freedom. Look at all these jobs out here. You guys are working remote. I got friends who like they travel and they're still clocked in working. So I think you have to be very careful for the reasons you're doing it.
Yeah, that's important. And that goes back to knowing yourself, right? Some people are, business owners, right? Start their own business, and other people are working. And again, like, what's going to make you happy, right? What's your level of success? And so for some, right, it's that flexibility but for others, it's like, hey, I want to own my own thing and make my mark in the world. So I think that's important. Well, we're almost at times, but I wanted to give you the opportunity to, have any final thoughts or parting wisdom to share with the audience.
No, man, you squeezed a lot out. Yeah, those are all great questions. I appreciate the time you put into this, and the background, and the fact that you went to 7-Eleven to buy some of our product when I brought you some. I appreciate that, man. But no, I don't have any big words of wisdom to conclude with. I think we covered a lot.
Thank you, Pete. I appreciate that.
Of course, man.
Just how can people, want to learn more about Dropkick? Where can they find it? I mean, obviously it's everywhere, but more about you, right? Just, how can people learn more?
Yeah, so Dropkick Brew is pretty much the handle for everything. So our Instagram, social media, our website domain, all that. That's definitely where you can kind of follow the fun. And we typically keep our store locator updated on our website, even though it's growing, which is a good problem that it's not fully up to date as far as where you can find Dropkick. But if you're tuning in from a digital standpoint, that's it. You can buy pretty much all of our products. If you don't, right now we're really in Southern California, some of Arizona, and we're getting into like, Riverside is Southern California. But if you can't, we ship everything in the U.S. So even our cans, our beans, our K-cups, all our products we actually do offer on our website too. So if you're dying to try the horchata, good news is if you're in New Jersey, we can get it to you.
Love that.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, thank you, Pete. Appreciate it.
Of course. Thank you, man.
All right.